I didn't believe in ghosts at all before. But now I do believe, and this is the story that made me a believer. About 2 years ago, I was working a part-time job at a convenience store. This particular convenience store closed at 11. On that day, it was just my co-worker Sarah and me working the night shift. The time was 10:45. Sarah asked if we should begin the process of shutting down soon, expressing a desire to get home earlier. While the official closing time was 11, we were supposed to clock out at 11:30. But on some days, when the weather was bad, or if Sarah wasn't feeling well, we'd clock out earlier. That day, too, we hurriedly finished up tasks like checking sales, collecting money from vending machines, washing up. It was exactly 11, and we planned to leave together at 11:20. We locked the entrance, turned off lights, and started preparing for tomorrow in the back room. Then suddenly, the entrance chime rang, the one that rings when someone enters the convenience store. I had Sarah go check while I set the surveillance monitor to show the entrance camera feed. On the monitor, I could see a woman standing there. I could make out that she had long hair and was wearing a whitish one-piece dress, but I couldn't clearly see her face. Sarah came into view on the monitor, glancing quickly outside the entrance before coming back. I asked Sarah why she hadn't opened the door for the customer. She insisted there was no one there, but I was sure there was definitely a woman on the monitor. There's no way she couldn't have seen the woman standing right in front of the entrance. I thought she was probably just being her usual goofy self, blowing me off when I pointed out her mistake. I set the surveillance monitor back to cycling feeds, and we resumed closing the store. About 10 minutes passed. I glanced at my watch. It was now 11:15. I absent-mindedly looked at the monitor, which was showing the beer section. The feed switched to the magazine corner. Then, at that moment, through the glass in front of the magazine corner outside the store, that same woman was standing there. She seemed to be looking this way at the camera. It felt creepier than just her looking at the camera. It felt like she was looking directly at me through the lens. The very next moment, the feed switched to the hot food section. I told Sarah that the woman was back there again. This time, she asked that I be the one to check instead. At this point, I just thought it was someone playing a prank or an odd person at most. As I started to get up, Sarah waved at me frantically to look at the monitor. I looked, and it showed the snack aisle. But there was the woman who'd been outside earlier, this time with her back turned to the camera. Sarah was panicking. The doors were definitely locked, and we didn't hear any sounds of the locks being forced. Moreover, it had only been 20 seconds since she just checked outside. It was almost impossible for someone to have entered through the locked doors. I fixed the monitor view on just the snack aisle. The woman remained unmoving. Then suddenly, the phone started ringing. Sarah and I both jumped and looked at the phone in shock. It rang for about 2 rings before stopping. I quickly glanced back at the monitor. The woman was gone. I frantically hit the button to cycle camera views. Magazine aisle, clear. Snack aisle, clear. Beer aisle, clear. The register, there. She was standing behind the counter, facing away from the camera. Sarah gestured to me that she was getting closer. By this point, I was certain it wasn't human. The woman continued standing with her back turned. Sarah looked at me, asking me in a trembling whisper what we should do. There were 2 entrances to the back room we were in, one from behind the counter and another door across from it. However, even if we exited through the back door, we'd still have to go through the store and unlock the front entrance to get outside. As I was thinking this over, I suddenly heard a scream. I found Sarah sprawled on the floor, staring wide-eyed at the monitor. While the woman's body was still turned away, her head had rotated to her back to face the camera. Sarah was becoming hysterical as she shut off the monitor's power. I grabbed the keys, and then the monitor powered back on by itself. Displayed on the monitor was an extreme close-up of the woman's face. Her blank expression was barely visible through the thick black hair. Her skin looked pale, but her eyes were strikingly black. Her eyes moved in their sockets. She first looked at me and then stared at Sarah. Sarah was becoming delirious. She sprinted to the back door and grabbed the doorknob before letting out a blood-curdling scream. I rushed to Sarah's side, but she had collapsed in front of the door. As I reached out to help Sarah, the lights in the store shut off all at once. I could now barely make out Sarah's prone figure by the illumination from the street lamp. I quickly scanned the store, looking for any sign of the woman's presence, but saw nothing. She was gone. I stood frozen for a moment, continuing to look around with just my eyes. I fought back my trembling and slowly approached Sarah. I quietly knelt down to try to wake her up. When I turned her head toward mine, it was no longer Sarah's familiar face staring back at me. A grotesque smile covered the woman's pale face, her features copying Sarah's but twisting and distorting. I remember lurching back at the sight. The store lights suddenly flickered back on, but Sarah disappeared. There now was an empty space where her body used to be. I called out for Sarah, but received no response. In a panic, I grabbed my keys from the counter and rushed out the back door without a backward glance. I unlocked my car and started the engine, driving away as fast as I could. My hands were shaking, even while they gripped the steering wheel tightly. I don't know why, but as I drove away, the urge to look back at the convenience store suddenly felt irresistible. I took one last glance at the store through my rearview mirror, and there, under the blinking store lights, stood the figure of the woman from the surveillance monitor. The drive away from the store was a blur, but I remember having this sinking feeling that I should never go back to the store or look for answers about what happened to Sarah. I sometimes feel guilty about what happened to Sarah, but in those moments, the memory of her face transforming into that woman's reminds me of how terrifying that night was. Her face continues to haunt me to this very day.